Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to dive into the work of Tadeusz Kantor and Antonin Artaud. Just kidding. No, this season we're talking about money. Yes, everyone's favorite obsession in these terrific times. And more specifically, the business of theater. Yes, warning, this particular video may mostly just be Sarah and I talking at you. Woo! But we've included some insights from this season's theater experts to hopefully keep it interesting.
You may be wondering, are they just going to tell me how I can get all the jobs in the world with branding? Nah, we'll leave that to the expert agents, managers, and coaches. Also, sorry, not sorry. We will not be giving you a top 10 tips for making your self-tape better. This video is more of a nuts and bolts of how and what theater actors get paid. Or, well, some nuts, some bolts of what and how theater actors get paid, which we hope will serve as a foundation and reference guide for future videos this season.
Yeah, we decided to start here because there seems to be some general misunderstanding from those outside the biz that all actors are either super famous and rich or untalented and starving. Despite the schadenfreude you may have seen during the LA fires or your pipe dreams of instant fame, the truth is that most actors are somewhere between those two extremes on a spectrum, and that talent doesn't always guarantee money. There are, of course, many different mediums that employ actors. You got film, television, streaming, stage, YouTube. And every medium has different rules determining how folks get paid and what that pay is. United States theater historically has 3 tiers of theater companies. You've got equity, non-equity, and community theater. Again, broadly speaking, the differences between these tiers is that equity and non-equity theaters purport to be professional theaters, hiring and paying professional actors and artistic staff. Community theaters rely primarily or exclusively on volunteer support. Let's take a closer look at each. Per the American Association of Community Theaters, there are over 6,000 community theaters operating all over the United States. AACT defines a community theater as one that tends to be operated for local, cultural, and educational purposes, and commonly seeks to obtain the patronage and production participation of the community as a whole.
Non-equity theaters live in the nebulous space between community theater and equity theater. There seems to be 2 criteria of how to determine whether a theater is a non-equity theater or a community theater.
Yeah, I've heard this discussion be either that, do you pay your entire team or not, your actors, your creative team? But I've also heard it as it's the quality. And I would lean towards, do you pay people? Or actually, it's not even leaning. That's how I would define it. Like, because you can see a bad play by a professional company, and you can see an amazing play by a community theater that didn't pay anyone. So, and also quality is not objective. It's like, everybody has their opinion. You can sit next to somebody and they love it and you hate it. So it's, do you pay people?
Not everyone shares Flora's and our perspective. Over the past 4 years I've been auditioning in Chicago, I've noticed a substantial number of audition calls from theaters identifying as non-equity have been uncompensated. Others offer an ambiguous amount of compensation, promising a percentage of ticket sales, which can sound like a lot until you remember most non-equity shows do not come close to selling out the small theaters where they're housed. Many offer pay-what-you-can or lower-priced tickets. The cast and crew all get comps to fill seats, and the total ticket intake is usually split between every single person who helped build that show. Of the theaters that offer specific flat fee stipends, they seem to range between $150 on the low end to $1,500 on the high end, with several around $400. But as of the time of filming this essay, the vast majority of non-equity theater companies that are offering any compensation at all are offering a percentage of ticket sales or less than $300. So what do these stipends cover? Approximately 6 weeks of rehearsal, up to 20-ish hours per week, plus 4 or more weeks of performance every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night. Sunday afternoon, Monday nights for industry, Wednesday nights for the school kids. Best case scenario, no matter which way you slice it, these stipends are nowhere near Chicago's minimum wage. They're not even near the absolutely appalling federal minimum wage. And again, the majority of non-equity theater companies do not pay over $1,000 a run. So even with consistent back-to-back bookings, it's simply impossible to make a living doing non-equity theater in Chicago.
The other way to distinguish non-equity from community theater may be the quality and aim of the performance. Quality is, as Flora mentioned, highly subjective. Sarah and I have both seen or been in community theater productions that were, chef's kiss, exceptional, and non-equity productions that were less than great. As to the aim of the performance, by the late 1960s, most community theaters seem to have abandoned theater as art, to revel in theater as diversion, a social gathering place, a place to have fun.
I really appreciate the quotations around fun there, Mark.
Well, you know how these theater historians like Ms. Lynch and the team of academics that she was quoting have unusual notions about what constitutes fun.
Much like video essayists?
Uh-huh. It seems that by the late 1960s, community theater was more devoted to fun-time plays and musicals. Sound of music for the 200th time, anyone? While non-equity theaters focused on more challenging artistic works. In fact, many great American plays and musicals got their start in non-equity theaters before treading those Broadway boards. Hadestown, for example, traveled all around Massachusetts and Vermont as what its creator Anais Mitchell dubbed a DIY theater project, before striking gold on Broadway and becoming a bit of an obsession for Sarah and me.
Why We Build the Wall might have been a little too prescient, though.
I mean, I don't even think that the Donald can carry a tune, much less hit those low notes. But with his boundless narcissism, I wouldn't be too surprised if next season's lineup at the Kennedy Center included a solo performance of Funktown. Why do we build the wall? Eric, Don Jr., Ivanka. Why do we build the wall?
We build the wall to keep Daddy King. Ugh, I have to say, though, as far as leaders go, I'd take Hades as my president any day over that guy. One last fun Chicago-specific distinction between non-equity and other theaters. Here, many non-equity theaters use another label, storefront, because, you guessed it, they are literally located behind storefronts and scattered throughout the city with a large concentration north of the Loop. One of my favorite storefront entrances is Trapdoor Theater, which feels like a speakeasy with its alley entrance and behind the restaurant location.
Last, but maybe most familiar, there's equity theaters. At the beginning of the 20th century, there was a lack of pay equity amongst theatrical productions. Actors were expected to agree to unlimited and uncompensated rehearsal time. Still, actors tolerated poor pay conditions for the love of the art until they witnessed the unionization success of the National Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees and the Dramatists Guild, which represented stagehands and playwrights respectively. Realizing that they too should have some basic protections from intolerable working conditions and routine exploitation, actors drafted the Actors' Equity Constitution in May 1913, and the union was formally recognized by what is now the AFL-CIO on July 18, 1919.
In Chicago, Equity uses a tier system to govern its contracts. Steppenwolf, one of Chicago's largest equity theaters, is Tier 6, with a current minimum weekly salary of $574.50. A Tier 1 theater currently has a minimum weekly salary of $134. Below that is Tier N, which offers a minimum weekly salary $1 lower than Tier 1. Over half of the equity theaters operating in Chicago are Tier N.
Beyond the guaranteed minimum weekly salary, Equity offers great benefits. Overtime pay, extra pay for additional duties, per diem, or housing on tour, mandated number of hours you can work in a day, mandated days off, safety guarantees, dispute resolution, and even retirement plans and health insurance if you work enough hours.
And it's fairly easy to join. Unlike the Screen Actors Guild, which represents TV and film actors and requires several days of work on a SAG-AFTRA set before one can join, Equity's requirements to join under its open access policy are fairly lax. One way to join under this policy only requires proof that you worked at a theater in Equity's geographical jurisdiction. So those storefront shows where you took home a percentage of ticket sales or less count. That also means that there's no specific ladder to climb here. You don't have to work for a certain amount of time at a community theater, then a non-equity theater before you qualify for an equity role.
A lot of it has to do with the combination of talent, luck, and then the most important ingredient is hard work, because you have to have all those things to come together to get that equity contract, that first equity contract. And then you are more on the path of being just an actor.
The protections and financial incentives equity offers are certainly substantial, but there are drawbacks to joining. First, there's the initiation fee, which is $1,800. After that, annual fees are a relatively low $176. There are also dues, currently 2.5% collected through weekly payroll deductions on each equity contract you work. Equity offers benefits like healthcare and retirement, but they require you to work a certain number of days every 6 to 12 months. And those requirements, low as they may be, are difficult for many actors to meet, given the ever-growing talent pool and ever-shrinking number of opportunities. There's just never a guarantee you will work at all, much less the requisite number of days.
The biggest drawback is the limitations equity places on where you can work. That cool storefront theater you have your eye on can't work there because it's non-equity and you're a union member.
Even if I were equity, which I haven't been because I like to do the storefront stuff, right? But like, even if you still need that extra income.
I've had one friend that was very successful in Portland by staying non-equity. And he said, had I gone equity, it would have been severely detrimental to the money that he was getting, because he was able to take so many other gigs. Obviously, he's a very talented actor. Everybody wanted him. But he made the distinction and the choice to stay non-equity to make more money.
In fact, many of the actors we reached out to while researching this essay cited the lack of consistent equity work and the relative abundance of non-equity opportunities in Chicago as the main reason they don't join the union. But without a union, actors are unprotected and have the same potential for exploitation that existed in 1912 and, well, since the dawn of time. True, theaters that treat their actors and staff poorly get a bad rap. Shout out to the Chicago theater makers for hosting threads on problematic companies, and to all the Facebook theater groups requiring pay transparency in their opportunities postings. That said, there are always new actors who don't know, who want experience, and who take opportunities that result in 4 years of PTSD. Not that I personally know anything about that at all.
So that's the basics of actor pay and a peek into the Chicagoland theatrical landscape. But it's just the beginning of our conversation. So join us next time when we check back in with our experts and learn a bit more about the financial challenges theater makers face and how artists who love the craft make it work.
Mark, you have a new tagline, right?
Yes, it's PhysicalLies analyzed. They're lies that are physical. The PhysicalLies analyzed 365 days a year, 100 times in your mind. Push up, physical lies, analyzed. That's how we do it, boy.
So you're saying it's still being workshopped, yes?
Yes, that's not. It's a work in progress.
So thanks for sticking that out and for joining us today here on the channel. Please like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, do all the things that help bring us to you. And we'll see you back here next time.
Bye.